meeting to order. Our school board meeting, March 24th, is 5:30. We're practicing social distancing best practices, and we have people live through the YouTube, as well as our board members. We have Mr. Meek, Dr. Cristobal O'Connor, Ms. Goodwin Caldwell, and Ms. Grayson, who will be with us online in 1 minute. But at this time, I will ask if we will stand for prayer. And Ms. Linda Marson-Fair, would you please be so kind as to lead us in prayer?
Thank you. Let us pray. Dear God, as this day and each day begins, we reach for your hand, confident you will guide us through this turbulence, as you so faithfully have guided us through the calm. Amen.
At this time, I will ask Mr. Stoddard to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
justice.
liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. This meeting is live streamed, and so this is something a little different that we've all experienced, but due to the circumstances, we will endure and we will proceed with our board meeting. 2.01, adoption of consent calendar.
Motion to approve.
Okay, any questions? All those in favor, please address verbally. I will call your name, Mr. Meek, and everyone else will say, well, we will just say aye. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Mr. Meek? Dr. Cristobal O'Connor? And Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Okay, so we still have two that are working on getting online with us.
I'm online. This is Michelle. I'm online.
We got your voice. We got your voice.
Oh, okay.
So thank you.
Yeah. You didn't call me. That's why.
My apologies, Ms. Goodwin Caldwell. Thank you. At this time, 3.01 Superintendent's Report. Dr. Royce.
Thank you, Ms. Benswell. This is a very unusual situation. We commented as to that last Sunday. It's really unprecedented, at least in our generation of educators. So I did want to take just a few minutes tonight to go back and hit some of the high spots as far as things that occurred, the order in which they occurred, and how we've addressed them. You all have received periodically updates, sometimes daily, sometimes a day or two apart. The one you received this afternoon, most recently, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to look at it, was the announcement made by the governor's office, joint statement from the governor and the state superintendent of education, effectively extending the closure of public schools in the state of South Carolina through the end of April. Now, I believe he did include some language in that he would review it as time passes between now and then if circumstances were perhaps to change. But it certainly is in keeping his order with the preparation that we've already done in order to ensure as best we can that we continue to provide both a sense of normalcy to our students and a continuity of instruction in the best way that we can, given the unique circumstances. And I believe that the first is as important as the second. So, just to review, we looked at the possibility of a pandemic that in our emergency planning as far back as 2005, up to 2008. We first addressed COVID-19 on March the 1st. We drafted a bulletin. On March the 2nd, we met with DHEC and we finalized that first bulletin. We got an extra G there, and sent email to all employees giving a definition, providing tips on the prevention of spread, as well as the district's response. March 3 to 13, we distributed posters and also conducted electronic posting about hand washing, other preventions, and facts about COVID-19. On Sunday, March the 15th, Governor McMaster ordered the schools closed through March the 31st. We began daily parent messages. We also assured our employees they continue to be paid for the closure, though some makeup time may be expected from those unable to work during the closure. On Monday, March the 16th, educators filled out a framework that was created by our academic department to roll out e-learning for the first 10 days of closure. Food nutrition services served breakfast and lunch at 15 school sites. We boosted our Wi-Fi signals at every one of our locations to ensure that they could be easily received from the drive-through lines at the schools and from the parking lots. We moved our district facilities, our 12-month personnel, to a summer schedule in order to accelerate work and reduce exposure. Tuesday, March 17th, we had home learning materials printed and assembled for distribution. We also distributed, gathered the Chromebooks for distribution, and we established Chromebook swap-out repair services at each of our career centers to ensure that there was a place geographically convenient to all areas of the county. Again, recognizing we have limitations related to staffing as to the number of those we can staff. We also had to make some changes in our configurations within technology to facilitate the transmission of data out into homes and receiving it back, and ensure that we had appropriate servers in line, including those servers that filter for our system. On Wednesday, March 18th, teachers and other non-12-month school personnel begin working from home, and parents begin to pick up the Chromebooks and materials at school. Our e-learning online resources launched. On Thursday, March the 19th, we added 42 additional meal sites, delivering meals from Wi-Fi enabled buses. They don't simply deliver them and pull away, they remain on that site for a period of time to provide Wi-Fi connectivity to our students who might walk up, drive up, or be driven up. They can sit there, they can upload information they have to return to their school, their teacher, and they can download information, even if they don't have connectivity in their home. Friday, March the 20th, we served 11,150 million. On Monday, March the 23rd, we delivered to the homes all Chromebooks and materials that were not picked up at school, and a number of personnel engaged in the delivery of those items. We added 24 additional meal sites. All GCS buildings and playgrounds were closed to the public. Non-essential district level staff began working remotely. We also began the second 10-day set of content was sent to teachers and schools that was created by our academics department. On Tuesday, March the 24th, school staff print out second 10-day set of content as needed. Plans for facilities maintenance and security developed and finalized in case of extended closure. You see the governor's announcement up there. Today we serve 13,650 meals at, I believe now, 15 fixed sites and 66 bus produced or bus staffed sites. On March 25 and 26, parents will pick up the second 10-day set of content packets at schools. High schools and career centers are collecting all the personal protective gear that we have that has been used in instructional programs, and we're moving that over to prison. It's not a large amount, but it's stuff that we don't need. They have a need for it. We're moving it over to. March the 30th, remaining packets will be delivered to students. We're transitioning to personnel on site only if necessary to ensure facilities are maintained appropriately, support the emergency efforts, ensure effective support and maintenance of home instruction, and ensure payment of our employees and our vendors. Obviously, it's very important to pay our employees. It is also equally important that we pay our vendors. Moving forward, April the 5th, teachers will complete the creation of third 10-day set of content, primarily new material, to go through April 3rd. Prior to spring break, we will deliver the remaining packets to students. Ongoing, we continue to process payroll and accounts payable on time. We maintain facilities to be ready to reopen quickly when schools reopen. And we continue to provide support and assistance to schools and families through our school counselors, our mental health counselors, and our United Way partners. I don't think that's a playable video in there. That really concludes the summary of our efforts today. As you might imagine, those are pretty brief bullet points. But I think all of us have an appreciation for the amount of work 10,000 employees have put into carrying all this out, moving it forward in a fairly seamless manner, we believe. And it also reflects a great effort on the part of our community of learners, now including parents and students, and how they're working through this new ground for all of us. Now, we've had students that have taken courses online, but nothing of this magnitude. We have teachers that are becoming accustomed to delivering instruction in a very different way. And I know they miss being with their students miss being with them. If there is something fortunate about this, I think it is fortunate that it occurred at a time during the year. We were moving into the end of the third quarter, beginning the fourth quarter. So our teachers and students had already established personal relationships with each other, boards in our classrooms through the predominance of the year. And I believe that makes it much easier to move into this relatively uncharted waters with both sides, both the home side and the school side, because they do already have that relationship. I think it would have been far more challenging had this occurred the second week of the school year or the third week of the school year, anytime during the first month of the school year. I think it has gone exceedingly well. Are there issues with it? Yes. We've tried to respond to them in a very quick and responsive manner. We established early on for our principals, we established a COVID email. It comes into a group of people. One person has primary responsibility for answering their questions. In most cases, their questions are answered within about 15 to 20 minutes. Sometimes they may get a delay, but we can't give you that answer now when you call us. So we did that early on. We send a bulletin out every day to principals. Within that bulletin, it has information not only for the principal, but the principal can cut and paste and send to the applicable employees within the school, whether that be the teaching staff, or the guidance staff, and all of our certified personnel at the school level have responsibilities, whether that be delivering instruction directly to students or following up with students who may have some issues. We're still, as we've noted, continue to provide counseling and mental health services. They have to be done over the phone. We're also maintaining the tip lines that we have, the helplines that we have. The student indicates that they need assistance in some area, perhaps a personal issue or problem, or some threat to their health and safety. We continue to respond to those just as if we were made aware of that during the school day. Certainly be glad to take any questions that you might have, that we might have the answers to, but I wanted to just provide a little summary of where we are, what we have done, what we are doing, and what we will continue to do to make this as seamless as possible for our students and our families.
Thank you, Dr. Boyster. Any questions? Ms. Glenda Marson-Bear?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Royster, and your whole team. I know this is just unbelievable, and especially food service. I sat and observed the food service people, and it was amazing at how they, I guess, took the task on, and it was just seamless. But my question goes to that population that you spoke a little bit about the mental health counselors, and I've had a couple of calls on that, and also on our Washington Center students, and on students who are in alternative So how do we handle that?
Our students that need these services, if they're coming from mental health, they have a directive from the state level, how they handle those services, and they are not allowed currently to provide any one-to-one services. In other words, not in-person services. They have to provide them with the telephone, by email. I don't know if there are any exceptions to that, but they fall under the Department of Mental Health. They receive their direction from me. In our case, our contacts with our counselors, social workers, also through telephone, not one-to-one in-person delivery. We are making every effort to provide an equivalent level of services to special needs students. For example, their special ed teachers contact them every day, as opposed to our requirement for our regular ed teachers. If they're not interacting with that teacher, they're to contact them twice a week. Special ed has a directive to contact me every day. There obviously are restraints to what we can do because of the environment that we're in. So we are providing services above and beyond that which we provide to regular ed students. But obviously, they are not the same things that they would receive if they were in person in a school location. And I'm sorry, I believe you had a third one. I'm not sure I answered you.
You in Washington Center
Well, Washington Center would be the special ed school.
and students in alternative facilities.
If they are in a group home, then we have to follow whatever the direction is of that group home. We also can't provide their instruction in person. We'll provide it through electronic means. If they don't have that, then the only thing we can do is provide them packets of work.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Mr. Sutton.
One question, Dr. Worcester. In looking at the minutes of the March 15th meeting,
Yes, sir.
there was a statement in here that said, as far as e-learning and these students, said we will provide content online help students review.
Yes, sir.
Review. Are we going to continue to review, or will we go forward if we're doing the month of April? Are we going to be reviewing, or are we going to review material?
We are transitioning from review to new material. If we were to be in this situation until the end of the year, continue to review to that point would not be what we need to do. Now, we know that that's going to be a challenge, and that will probably require some more work on our part in the fall, but we're going to move forward with new content. Now, in some situations, we have whole classes where they're all connected, they can all move forward at one time, and they probably have already begun new content. But we have others where that's not the case. So we'll do the best that we can do to deliver new content in a way that families can help with that at home. It's a little easier with our youngest students. There are a lot of activities and things that parents can do with them that may not even seem exactly like schoolwork, that helps them build the skills and knowledge they need to have. A little more of a challenge at the later grades, but then all the students third grade and above have a device. And if nothing else, they have the ability to go and upload and download at any one of our schools. They don't have to go to their own school. They can go to whatever school is closest, or they can go to any one of those feeding sites Monday through Friday. We're running them 5 days a week. Any one of those feeding sites and get connectivity through the Wi-Fi on the bus.
I understand the difficulty in that.
Yes, sir.
I just want to I hope we'll look at you and not review.
No, we're moving into new, but we have to be, well, I guess it's over, we're moving cautiously into new. We don't want to leave people too far behind. We also need to undertake new instruction as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Mr. Shamble.
Couple of questions, if I get a lot of questions. Yeah, are there any plans to do anything during the summertime to assist students where they might have missed something during the last quarter?
At this point, we don't, other than the summer reading camps. As we get closer to that, we may look at opportunities that we might consider. Now, anything that obviously that we go into the summer and we do outside of what we would ordinarily do, obviously has a cost to it. transparent to everybody. As we look at what's going on around us, there's going to be a hit to the economy that we do not yet know. And I don't think we're going to know reasonably in the next couple of weeks or 4 or 5 weeks even what the budget picture may look like for the coming year.
I understand too that, we want to be obviously aware of the budget constraints, and there may not be that much money left over in the state budget after it all said and done.
Yes, sir.
But my concern pretty primarily there is those students who would normally need maybe additional hands-on assistance and so forth, that maybe we come up with some thoughts as to how we could address them so that they don't get continuously behind during the fall when it comes up again. Other one is, I think I've got some of these answered already, but the buses are going to the school sites with their Wi-Fi's. Are they, for lack of a better term, sitting there all day with their Wi-Fi?
Now, the buses are not going to any school sites. They're going to other sites. So the 66 bus locations, they are not school.
Okay.
If they sit there for 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours,
2.5 hours probably also.
2.5. So they're at that fixed site. There's 66 buses at a fixed site out in the community other than our school. And every school has Wi-Fi. So it doesn't have to be one of the 15 schools that's a feeding site. If you pull up outside of school on Sunday afternoon, you can connect to the Wi-Fi.
And the students that have Chromebooks, that's 3rd grade and above.
Yes, sir.
So it's for the 1st and 2nd grade students, how are we doesn't have?
Those are packets of material. Some of their families have connectivity. Jeff, you want to add a little bit to that?
K1 and 2, there are some schools that have extra devices, so they're sent home with K1 and 2. And then for the ones that don't, if they have family devices, a lot of those teachers are connecting with them via Google Hangout, which is similar to what you're using here with Zoom. And if they don't have those options, then they have the packets of information we provided, which is about 10 pages a day, about 200 minutes per day.
And as far as the meals, I saw about 13,000 meals.
Yes, sir.
Is that covering the basic needs of folks who normally get the free and reduced lunch?
Yeah. There are, within our system, about half of our students get free and reduced lunch. So if you use those numbers and round numbers, that's getting maybe not quite 40%. It's a lot more than we get during the summer feeding program. And our numbers went down yesterday because we're down running. That had an effect on it. Went up today. Now this service is probably going to expand. And, we're doing this sort of at the direction of the state because they're allowing us to do things we ordinarily would be prohibited from doing. That they've obtained waivers from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to allow us to do. And that service and those parameters have expanded over the last few weeks, and it probably will continue to expand. And hopefully it won't expand to a point that we're challenged to get enough people to carry out the responsibility. Because the other thing is we're trying to be very cautious who we're using to work. They exhibit any kind of signs that they don't even feel good. They don't need to be there. So some of the things we're doing, depending on how this tracks up, may become more challenging, of course. Right now, we're able to staff these things. We're able to keep our systems running, provide our connectivity back through our technology. We're able to maintain our buildings, keep them up the way we should, make sure they're clean, make sure that we're continuing to circulate air, all of which are very important when we occupy the building, and if we're hitting other issues. But that could become a challenge if we've not yet reached the peak of this pandemic, and it would appear, based on what we see and read and hear about it, and the information that we get, we basically had a statewide call about every day since this began. It has not yet reached its peak, unfortunately.
And just one question. I know all this e-learning stuff would be a little bit of a challenge. I mean, what are we seeing? I mean, are we finding students are zipping along happily with that? Are parents dealing with it? Are we getting any questions about it?
We get a lot of questions and we try to answer them as quickly as we can. some students they're all about it. They're flying along. You see pictures of them posted on the website and social media. Others have a hard time with it. They're struggling to adapt with it. But, you know, there's students that have challenges sitting sometimes in the regular class. This is a totally new environment for both the teacher and the student. Teachers are accustomed to using technology. Most of them use it very frequently in their class, but they're accustomed to using it when everybody's sitting right there in front of them, for the most part.
Last comment, just a comment, I just want to make sure that we make sure and compliment and be as much as possible. All you guys have been working on this, all hands on deck for the last couple of weeks. I think you've been doing an excellent job. And I think it's well for the school, district. And I think that I'm happy. I'll put them in the district.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Shanley. Mr. Lewis.
Well, I echo that. I mean, we have experienced in our house, both as a teacher and a student and a board member, how all of this has been rolled out in the last 7 days. And it's really just incredible. And I am just so proud of what the staff has been able to do, really to reinvent education in a 48-hour period. I just think it's really remarkable what this district was able to accomplish in an incredibly short period of time. So I thank you and the people that you surround yourselves with for doing that. I'm really thankful for the live stream as well. I know that that's something we've talked about for a while, and I just think it's a great model that I think other boards could set for this community, that we can still be a public body and not have to have the public present in our meetings in order to be open to the public. So I thank you for doing that. I did have 2 questions if we could. So one of them is, I'm having a hard time answering the question, and so I'm just going to ask it mainly so I can better understand it. So salaried non-exempt employees who are not working from home and are not at work have been asked to work, and basically they're committing to half of their time to be completed at some time in the future.
At this point, what we have said to salary non-exempt and also to hourly, because they're all being paid, they have jobs that they cannot do remotely.
Right.
So what we have said to them is we would expect in return for the fact you're receiving 100% of your pay, 50% payback when we ramp back up and come back to school. Now, as time goes by, you may need to review that, because you could reach a point where there wouldn't be enough time to capture it. But there is, I believe, from an equity standpoint, a need to recapture some of that time, because we also have people that are working for their salary. So it is both the idea that we maintain equity, particularly within work groups, and then between work groups. And it's not always possible to do them all the same way, but what we're trying to do is develop a system or a method by which we can, as I said to the team, the administrative staff, executive staff, I want to be able to stand in front of any of our employees and explain to them why you're doing this and why this person's doing that and why that's equity. So what we hope we've done to this point is something that we can stand in front of anybody and say, well, nobody's just sitting and not doing anything. There will be an expectation for some people. There are others that are working now. And even within work groups, particularly when we start back after spring break, in the bus driver work group, if they're driving, we're going to pay them a little bit more because they're driving than the ones that are sick. And doing the same within the hourly group in paint. They're in there cooking and preparing and packaging. We're going to pay them a little bit more than the person who's sitting at home. So, and as this continues on, we may have to modify some of those things a little bit. Maybe we move to a quarter time or something. But the idea being we try to be as equitable as we can possibly be in a very unequal situation.
Well, I certainly appreciate both the acknowledgement that they need to be paid and the fact that we're not really sure when they're going to be able to pay us back. So we now know we're not going to be at school until at least May 1st.
Yes.
Do you envision though a scenario where people could go into time debt to the district that won't be accomplished before the school year is out? I mean, if people owe you 70 or 80 hours and the end of the school year comes, are they going to owe you hours during the summer, or are they going to possibly be able to write those hours off?
Well, I think there's really a sort of a two-phase answer to that. We could reach that point. Now, if we approach what looks like, well, it would be possible to do this in a reasonable amount of time, then we may shift from a half to a quarter. Or maybe we shift from a half to a third. But we're watching that closely. That's why we've kind of given the extra out. Well, up through spring break, this is what we'll do. When we come back after spring break, we might need to modify that. Then you have some work groups, for example, maintenance, they work a 40-hour week. So if they owe us time, then we're going to ratchet them back a little bit next week. Still going to have them working, but not the same schedule, because they work a 40-hour week. If they were to pay us back any time that they owed us, they would get credit at 1.5 times the amount they owe. So when they worked an hour beyond their 40, they get credit for 1.5 hours. So, but that's the only work group in the district. When I say work group, that's all of them. That's building services and maintenance, so it's custodial and maintenance. So that's 800 some odd people. So that we have to approach them a little differently, again, trying to maintain that equity.
Sure. Okay.
Is that it, Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. Ms. Wells?
I hate to say the same thing that somebody else has said, that what you guys have done has been absolutely incredible. And the teachers and the instructional coaches and the principals, it's just been incredible. And I've heard a lot of great feedback. I think that's to the size of our district and not most of your leadership and being able to run leadership. So, like Mr. Sutton, I'm a little concerned about how long we use, so I appreciate that we're going to move to new content. And I think that's important for our students, because if we're going to keep them engaged, we need to give them something to challenge them on. With regard to how that's handled in terms of assessments of assignments, what does that look like? Are we in a, are we assessing, because we're going to deal with something that has to do with final exams.
Jeff's had plenty of time to sit over there and think. I'm gonna let him answer that question, but that may well be one of the most challenging aspects of this, that there are probably a few more bumps in the road there than other parts of it. Now, we also believe that we're going to receive some guidance from the state, particularly at the high school level through UGT, and how they interpret what we're going to do. So some of that will be decided for us related to the actual grades. Doesn't speak directly to assessment, but related to high school credit, high school grades.
And that was the second part of my question.
So, and I think that they're still working through that. They're taking information and advice and questions from the districts and working on how that might look statewide. And I think in one of our conference calls this week, really, I guess two of them, most of the superintendents expressed a desire that really ought to be, particularly at the high school level, a statewide approach. We have the uniform grading scale statewide. But I'll let Jeff speak specifically to the actual assessment.
So what we're encouraging you to do right now at this point is really in participation grades to motivate the kids. So we're tracking that. We're going forward as they start dipping a little bit into the new content. We're encouraging them to continue tracking what kids are doing assignments, turning assignments. And most of our teachers are more providing feedback on the assignments, so they're giving them feedback on what they've done on the assignment. Simply because we are still, Dr. Rooster already kind of echoed, we're in an equity issue still. Half of class may have access to the internet and Chromebooks where they get immediate feedback and grading. Other kids you may not see work for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks back to know how those kids are doing in their classes. So we're trying to get creative on how we do that with phone calls and sometimes kids taking pictures of work with their phone and sending it to the teachers to help with that work. So we're getting creative with it, but we're really focusing more on the feedback right now than we are the specific assigning a numeric grade to assignments.
Well, and certainly, I was careful not to use the word grade,
Right.
and was more concerned about the assessment. If we're gonna keep kids from falling behind, then we need to assess and we need to provide feedback, because even from a family standpoint, our moms and dads, aunts and uncles and grandfathers and grandmas that are trying to teach their kids, I mean, everybody's taking this very seriously. They have taken this on. We have people in my company that have said, I can't work during these hours of the day because I'm working with my children to make sure they get the education. So I wanted to hear that we were trying to figure that. I know there's an equity issue, but we need to still be moving students along. We've done a phenomenal job with content and with the connection. So just wanted to hear. So we think from a grade standpoint, we're doing participation still, but we are providing active feedback with an assessment of what we're doing.
Correct. And we hope to and are working towards increasing that. Another thing we've talked about doing, we're really trying to get people out of the printed packet business, so to speak. How can we get more of the Wi-Fi out there? I mean, we got it really at 106 locations because there's Wi-Fi signal at this building. Then we're pushing out 66 buses 5 days a week to 66 more locations. There's some open, I don't know if you listed that in there, but one of the local carriers has open Wi-Fi access and through some of the repeaters they have in the community. We publicize that. And maybe we put some more buses out in places, because really you can go and download and then upload. You don't have to sit there and do your work. But you all understand that, but we got to work on continuing to communicate that to parents and the students. Hey, you can just walk your children over there on Saturday or Sunday, even if you're having to work during the week, and you can upload and download your work. So we really are working on how can we effectively communicate. And I think now every time we send out something, so we're adding this meeting site, we put a reminder on there. If you can go, you can upload and download your schoolwork while you're there. So the more places that I think we can get people to, obviously students that are old enough can walk over there to the school by themselves, younger students, go with a parent or older family member. And in any school, they don't have to walk. If they're a student at Tanglewood Middle School, but they live close to Welcome, they don't have to walk to their school, they can walk to Welcome. And that would be true all over the county.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, a couple of things. So with staff, non-essential staff working remotely. So we've got most of the staff, they don't have to be here. You do have them working from home with laptops and.
Well, for example, in this building today, there were probably somewhere a little north of 30 people spread out all over.
Okay. And normally we have how many people?
In this building, 110, 115 people. 120.
So generally, district staff have been able to take their laptops, take their desktops.
A lot of them have. Now, we've had the principals in the schools. A lot of the principals are in the schools. Unless they have a compelling personal issue, some people have maybe some medical issues or have family members that do. But if they're a director or above, we've expected them to be here while we've expected the principals to be in the schools. And that expectation for principals will shift next week, so that expectation here will shift as well.
Okay.
But one of the things, to just give an example, Robin had a number of people over there today in accounts payable, because they had to come in and scan the paper invoices into the system so they can work on them electronically.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how, people send us bills on a piece of paper, had to do that. Well, once they got that done, then they can go on home and start doing their work from home. So you may see people coming in and out, performing a part of a task here so they can go perform the rest of it.
Okay. So we normally have to hire a bunch of teachers every year. my assumption is if our folks are able to work remotely, that process of being sure that we're processing applications, we're doing video
And all-
interviews
yep.
and all those things, right? So we don't have to worry about being in a position to not have the teachers we need.
I don't want to use
Okay,
the words that she didn't use, Lynn's not in here tonight, but, I think they set a record last week for hiring. Well, if you're the principal sitting at the school.
That's right, you don't have to.
They're dealing with some issues, but there's a whole lot of things they're not dealing with, so they've been able to move pretty rapidly and aggressively in hiring. Still following all the procedures. And that's another task that we've set people up to do at home, the processing center. They've had to come in to do a little bit of it, but they're gonna do a lot of that.
That's right. That's, again, that's a concern too. We're gonna get to, before you know it, it's gonna be August. We're gonna start
We seem to be, in our looking at that, earlier today, I think we're ahead. We seem to be ahead, or should continue to be able to be ahead in that process.
And then the last thing, related to paying people hourly folks when they aren't working, I appreciate across the country, people have been trying to provide as much salary, normal salary as they can, but at some point, if you're not working, you're not providing service, if the economy continues to kind of roll on like it is, you have to make a tough decision. So I guess, help me understand how we wouldn't move pretty quickly to at least, a 5% reduction in pay or a 10%. If you're not working at all, if you're not able to work, why would that not be a place we might go to? Or maybe it's not, maybe it wasn't the first step, but could that be one of the steps that we move to so that we keep people, because it's a balancing act. You can lay off a bunch of people or you can keep.
At this point, I don't think we're at that place. I think, however, next year will be a very austere year. And I suspect there'll be a lot of things that we may have to consider and do next year. But we don't have any idea the revenue. Now, we do know that before this hit, the state of South Carolina had $850 million in recurring revenue. And they had right at $1 billion in non-recurring, $1 billion. But right now, they're not in session. And I think they basically said that what passed the House isn't going to happen. They have a continuing resolution in place. Probably the best thing that could happen for us would be that they simply fund us next year the way they did this year. But I don't know if that's going to be possible because of how long this goes on. So I think we can get through this year, there's going to be areas where sacrifice will have to be made. But just like we adopted that philosophy in 2009 and 2010, we tried to do as much in the upcoming year and avoid doing anything in the current year. And that would be the stance that we would take at this point. What might we need to do next year? Let's avoid having to do anything during the year this year. Give people more notice, give an opportunity to do other things. I don't think right now we're at that point. Our revenues are still tracking on their projection. Now, obviously that could change. But right today, our revenues are tracking on projection. So we have that money in hand. Obviously, there'll be some expenses that we won't incur during the course of this year. So I don't believe that at this point, that's something that we need to consider. But like a lot of other things, we run a lot of contingencies of what we might do or what we might have to do. So we have a lot of contingencies that we kind of set to the side. We need to pull those over, and we'll pull those over.
Because the difference with having to make cuts because we have a recession and because it's driven by not having the funding, it's different when we're in a situation of you're not delivering a service. And so I'm not suggesting we shouldn't pay people, not at all. But you're not providing a service and you're not working actively. So maybe there's a little different in my mind. And I think we also have to kind of answer to the taxpayers about how we're managing that. So
And unfortunately, the group that's not working are
Or the one-
comprised predominantly of our lowest wage employees.
Okay,
Is that it?
that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. Dr. Crystal Ball O'Connor. Ms. Michelle Goodwin Caldwell. Ms. Grayson.
Yes, yes, I have some questions.
Ms.
Let-
Caldwell, go ahead.
This is Michelle. Dr. Roster, thank you for responding to the community concerns about the food sites in an expedient manner. But I have some questions about the grades. I know that the grading period is going to be ending on the 27th. They're supposed to get report cards. How is that going to work?
The grade that they'll receive on the report card they get this month will reflect the work that they did up until the time they went home. In fact, the quarter closed, Jeff,
Technically closed on the 19th because the others were snow days that we were out.
and so the 19th was in relation, so they
Okay, are they
three days in the grading period, so that grade's pretty well established, and it'll be the grade that they had earned up to that point. We don't yet have the answers on what we'll do for fourth quarter.
how would they get how would that be distributed to them? Is that going to be through backpack, or how would they get those grades?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. It'll be through backpack for those who have access, and then we direct, some principals actually put the report card or in the packets that were delivered, say tomorrow and Thursday, and then some at the request of parents, they can request a mailed copy, and we'll mail it to their house.
Okay, now I also have a question about the since K2 are doing the handout packets, how would they get those grades from the, how are they turning those packets back in, and how would they be getting those grades for that? Is it a drop off they gotta get, or is somebody gonna be picking up the packets from those K through 2 student parents? How would that work?
So we've not at this point asked the parents to return that material. Some certainly have dropped off, but keep in mind, kindergarten and first grade are standards-based report cards, so they don't actually get grades. So everything up until this point, though, from grades 2 through 12 will be only participation grades. Basically, they did the work or they didn't do the work.
And we're working through how we might have them drop that material off, either the school site or one of those bus sites. They'll work through all that. And one thing, we want to be real careful how we receive back anything from somebody. When we hand something to somebody, we're holding one end, they take the other. Bringing things back in, we want to make sure we have all the correct information from DHEC and CDC, which seems to change on a very frequent basis. For example, we've given directions to our schools as to how to handle the mail and boxes they receive and letting them sit for a period of time. So there's a challenge to us getting the material back in and handling it in a manner that ensures the safety of the person giving it to us and the safety of the person who's receiving. We haven't quite worked through all that, but I think the real kind of base answer to your question was Mr. McCoy's about how the younger students are assessed.
Yeah. So you're saying 2nd through 12th grade, that I know they're to be electronically back to the teacher. How are the teachers going to be? Are they going to be responding within a certain time period like they usually have to, as far as the grades that they give them for the work that's turned in? How is that going to work?
Yes, ma'am. The only correction I made, I think you said 2 through 12, it would be 3, grades 3 through 12. Now, the requirement to contact might have a little more leeway there because of the difficulty in connecting with some people. But you're correct, that's all electronic. We're trying to move people and encourage them to go to one of our Wi-Fi sites so they can upload their work and download anything from the teacher if they don't have any other means of communicating with the teacher.
Now, second graders get grades, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Don't they get grades in second grade?
Yes, ma'am.
And they are getting packets, right?
Yes, ma'am, that's
So how
correct.
would that work for second grade?
The same thing, Ms. Caldwell, when we're able to figure out a safe way to get those packets back, they will provide that participation grade. Since it's been review work up to this point in time, they've been focused heavily more on the review side of things. So again, when we figure out how to get that back and assess that for participation, then our teachers will do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Dr. Boyce, are not hearing anyone else.
Linda,
I take it back. Is that Ms. Grayson?
that is Miss Grayson.
Yes, ma'am.
Quick question, satellite diploma programs, are those being handled? Like I had a student who is ready to take his exams. He's going through the material at his own pace, but he was told that he had to be physically at the building to take his exam. Is that going to change?
That's not accurate. If you'll send Nancy the name, we'll follow up on that.
Okay, so satellite can take exams remotely?
Yes, ma'am, we'll have to just work out some other things. He may be taking, some of that might be through South Carolina virtual. We'll have to basically just proctor him online and we'll just make those arrangements for him.
Okay, got it. Okay, I'll send that to Nancy. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Sue.
Hey, Crystal here. Can you hear me?
Your Zoom. Yes, Dr. Crystal.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to say this is amazing that you've figured out how to handle all of this so well. And it's been very upsetting just to try to imagine all the problems that are having to be solved. And I'm so appreciative that I don't worry more than I have to, because I know that you all are doing what needs to be done. And I really do mean that I appreciate that. I have two questions relating to participation. One is in those who are receiving meals as compared to those who are eligible to receive meals. And one is those who are participating in online instruction versus those who should be. Can you talk about those two things, please?
Well, participation in meals is ramped up to 13,000. If you only look at our eligibility for free and reduced lunch, that's 50% of our population. So that's half of 77,000. So we do not have the participation there that we would like to see. Now, we don't know if there are other places that might be providing that. I don't think there are. But that number has ramped up every day except yesterday, and it poured down rain yesterday. So there's every reason for us to believe that number will continue to increase.
And I guess my the reason I wonder is, and I know you've done everything you can to get the word out, but I wonder if there are people out there who need those meals and don't know that we're offering that anyone 18 years or younger can receive a breakfast and lunch. And I just, imagine there's only so much you can do, but I appreciate anyone who's out there and able to communicate that message to help us do so.
Well, if you have some awareness or something occurs to you of who we might share this with that maybe we haven't, we're glad to do that. But we pretty broadly advertise it within our ability to do so.
Is that something that we can help with? Is it valuable, you think, just to keep spreading that message, or do you think most people go to the school district website to find out?
Well, one thing you can do, if you're on social media, you can go find our announcements, because there's some on there every day. Like and share it, because that'll put it out to a group of people that we may not be putting it out to. And that's a pretty simple thing that you can do from home.
And the teachers could do that as well, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, anybody can do that. Just like, share. You don't have to like it, you can just share it.
Okay.
We appreciate it if you like it, but you don't have to like it to share it.
I'd like it. and share it if I can get Derek to help me again.
Although he seemed to be laughing at that, I think he probably would help.
Yeah. And the second thing about the those who are doing their instruction online, I wonder if we know that there are people who just have not yet started because they can't figure it out or don't have the equipment they need. If there's some kind of direct outreach possible, because those are the very ones who don't need to be falling behind right now.
We are collecting that data now. We can tell you how many of our devices logged on. What we can't tell you is if you used a device in your home that's not ours, we don't have a way to track that. So part of what we've done this past week is one of the responsibilities of the school is to reach out, to try to find everybody from whom they have not yet heard. Are you doing your work? Now, the individual teachers can tell us if they've logged on from a device other than ours, but we don't have a way to tell it. So we have to gather that information through the principals from each teacher. And we're in the process of doing that to see who's not doing anything and who's doing something and who's really keeping up or ahead of the game. So we're working to gather that information.
That's great. And I think that maybe if there are people in the district who want to be able to be helpful and can't, that's one of the things that some people might be able to help do, is just reaching out to those families and offering to support them in figuring this out, because it's pretty intimidating for some people to who don't have everything they need in place or the comfort with it.
Well, I was going to say, we're using a number of our employees that are not the actual classroom teachers. They might be instructional coaches, they might be counselors, they might be social workers, they might be attendance workers. We're using people like that to follow up on folks that we've not yet heard from.
Great. Okay.
A sort of cobbled together system for addressing that.
That's awesome. Those were my main concerns, is, who's falling through the cracks and what's happening. And I appreciate those answers. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ball. Dr. Royster, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
You see so many things on TV, and I'm trying to remember, but part-time and substitutes, there was one, I don't know if it was North Carolina, I don't know if South Carolina, said encourage those people to go and file unemployment. Is that what we're doing?
If you're part-time,
Yes,
we pay your part-time wage.
Okay.
Now, if you're not part-time, we do not pay EDP workers. They're paid out of the proceeds of the after-school programs that are generated at the school. That although we write their check, they're employees of those programs. The programs are generating no funds. So we have not paid those individuals. They're not really considered district employees in our definition. We do not pay substitutes. There's, I think, 1,500 substitutes. They work when now some of them choose to work every day, but they work when they choose to work. So we do not believe that we have a salary obligation to them. Now, we will help them. We'll help them with the paperwork, and they can file for unemployment compensation through the, what we call it now, Department of Workforce Development. It used to be the Employment Security Commission. So it is my understanding that they would be eligible. We have also gathered together a number of places that are hiring people. And we have sent to those groups of employees lists of this company is hiring, this company is hiring, this company is hiring. And that's to try to help them during this period of time.
I was just wondering, Dr. Boyce, I don't know how difficult it would be, but these packets that are going out K through second grade, if there was maybe just a little sheet that had where pickup lunches and breakfasts would be. Do you already do that, Jeff? I was just thinking outside the box. If we're sending these packets home, then why can't we just add one more little maybe call them and let them know what
I
time.
think we
and
could
where-
probably stick some on the outside, because right now, really, the packets, they're picking them up at those places.
Right,
So it's really only the ones that weren't either picked up at the school or picked up at those sites that we would want to put that on. They're the ones that we got people driving all over the place to deliver.
Right.
But I think that's certainly a good idea, and I don't think we've done.
because they may have siblings who go somewhere else and the word would spread that way. And also, I too want to commend the district in your leadership, Dr. Royster. I was at a person's home this morning, and they have time set aside for the daughter to do her work and keep up. And the fifth grader asked if she could FaceTime her teacher. And the mother said, "Do you have a question or what?" She goes, "I just need to just talk to her." And I just happened to be there, and the teacher answered the phone, and they talked and answered questions. And then she said, "Do you have any other questions?" And she said, "No, I just wanted to hear your voice, Miss So-and-so." And a fifth grader at A.J. Wittenberg. And so I would tell you, I was very pleased to be there and witness that. And then when I left, I was cutting through and I saw a group sitting under a tent with the meals. It was raining and they were there. So I thank everyone involved in trying to make sure that we are there for our students and their families, and that we, you, district, are there for your families and your children as well. So thank you. With that, I'll move on to our next one, 4.01. 4.01, architect selection of new K Innovation Incubator Center at Roper Mount Science Center. Recommended motion from the committee of the whole, it needs no second, to approve firm 1 SGA/Northmore Wright Design to design the new K Innovation Incubator Center at Roper Mountain Science Center. Are there any questions? Ms. Wells?
So in the light of everything that's going on and all the conversation we've had about not knowing what the budget is, do we believe it? Is there reason to move forward with this project versus delaying and waiting? I know we can approve this and you guys, I guess then will decide about entering into a contract, but I'm just wondering if this is a project that might bear putting on hold because it doesn't have the same sort of drivers that school expansion might have.
I think you make a good point. We may want to reconsider this when we move towards the contract. If we move forward on design, we're not really going to lose anything moving forward on design. Obviously, there'll be a cost attached to it. We wouldn't lose that work later on. And it'll give us a much better and clearer picture of what the cost is going to be. I think it's too early for us to say we might want to move this from here and replace this money with that money. There may come a time when we need to do that. If we move it now, if we don't approve it now, we certainly we're going to be delayed. We still got that window of time in design, which Scott design window 8 to 12 months, maybe.
Yes, sir.
So it really gets us in a better place to know what our financial picture looks like. If we had a hesitancy about it, we wouldn't recommend that you move forward.
So what's the approximate cost? I know it's a percentage of the construction, but I think our estimate we have for the construction budget, we think is probably low. So what do we think? How much money do we think this is that we're going to be spending?
Let me do a quick calculation to give you a ballpark. $500,000.
So we moved, how much money did we move out of our general fund balance over to debt service? I know it didn't cover this project, because this project was sort of already funded, which is always kind of.
This project's pre-funded, it's funded out of the building fund side. We moved, I believe, about $23 million, right at 23 and a little bit of change from general fund balance. In that, we did some things that would have been legitimately capital expenditures. So if we were to decide a year from now that you wanted to put this project on hold, we could take that approximately $10 million, I think, that sound right, Scott? About $10 million. We could move it over and replace $10 million that we spent out of general fund even after we spend it. Because the books don't close on building fund.
So we can, so that kind of answers no question. We could basically pull the money back that we sort of reassigned from fund balance to capital projects. We could pull that back over to the general fund,
Even after we spend it.
except for the $500,000 that we're gonna spend on design.
Well, we could pull back this 10 million. I mean,
Right. I'm just
there's 10
saying,
million.
yeah, that you could spend.
Except for the half million design.
Okay,
Thank you.
it's good, it's good.
Mr. Sailors.
Dr. Oyster, I'm a little confused with the answer you just gave. And maybe I'm wrong, but I've always worked from the belief that building and ground millage, capital improvement millage, and operational were two separate pots of money, and neither should the two meet. We can't borrow from one to pay bills in the other.
You cannot move capital money for a general fund expense. But if you expend general fund money on something that would be considered a capital expense, so it could be construction, or equipment, or renovation, you can move building fund money over to cover that.
Correct. But if this building is budgeted currently out of the capital budget, then if we get the short end of the stick from the state, it still doesn't affect the bottom line of what we have in that budget to fund built brick and mortar projects in general.
No, but it would allow you, if you chose to do so, to take that defer that building somewhere down the road, take the $10 million and apply it to a legitimate building or equipment expense that had been paid for or budgeted to the general fund.
Okay. Well, again, as in the conversation that we had during the committee of the whole meeting, coming from the application of brick and mortar side currently, I can assure you a lot of people's pencils are getting real sharp because they've got workers that need to have jobs. So that could play to our advantage as we move forward.
We would certainly hope that if we have some recession, we're going to have some, especially how much, that at least some of that would accrue to our benefit as it did in 2010, 2011 as well. It's good for.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir. Any others? Any other?
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Dr. Cristobal O'Connor.
Yes. Might I ask if Ms. Wells was asking if we should reconsider based on the current circumstances, whether to do it or just when to do it? And if the answer is whether to do it, it seems like we would approach it a little differently. So I just would like clarification on that if I could.
Well, I think
She's asking, well, I don't think,
What was her question about what I was saying?
Dr. Ball O'Connor, I think you're saying, you're just wanting to know if Ms. Wells felt the need to put this off. Is that correct?
If she meant to, I thought I heard her say, based on the current circumstances and some uncertainty with funding and where we are, should we consider postponing this? And the answer, I think, was we may consider that. But my question is, were you saying potentially reconsider whether to do it at all, or just potentially reconsider when to do it? Because it seems like those are two different answers that you would be looking for based on which way you meant that.
So what I'm going to ask Dr. Royster if he would explain why we would move forward on this, or why we would consider extending. So, and then maybe this will help you
Okay.
better understand.
I took Mrs. Wells' question to be, should we defer selecting the architect and not proceed with design at this point?
Okay.
Fail to do the project, just not to proceed at this point.
Okay.
My response to that was, while we will be out an amount of money in design, whether we proceed on schedule or we decide later, you all decide not to do it on the timeline it's on. I did not feel it, from the administration standpoint, that our best path forward right now is to delay it, but we need to look at that as we get closer to time to let the building contract.
Yes, sir. That clears that up. But my question, I guess, then to you, Dr. Royster, is I'm also wondering if you're saying that you're sure we want to go forward with it, just not when. I mean, just.
I believe it in the best interest right now to proceed with design, go into design and see what the estimated cost will be, because we know it'll be revised, because the price we have is based on when it was first put in there several years ago. And then at that point to see what is our financial condition, and do we want to move forward then? In other words, we wouldn't automatically go let a contract. And so we'd only be out the design, which we could use at whatever point we decided to move forward with the building, whether on schedule or at a later time.
Okay, thank you.
Go back and modify design, some regulations might change, but generally those are minor modifications.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Hearing Ms. Wells.
So just so we remember, the driver for this, as I remember it, was in large part to the increase in the number of students that have been participating in our programs, and the fact that both at our career centers and in our schools, we've reached a point, not yet, but at some point, we are going to hit a capacity issue. And that wasn't something that we thought, for instance, the CMI Center with their program would be able to absorb, help us absorb, right?
It's twofold. It's specialty space, which is similar to career centers, and we are approaching maxing out the career centers. It also was the intent to do some things that we're not doing at all four that might be unique and more in keeping with innovation in our community, to provide something that we don't provide either at the local high school or at the career center. So it was a twofold purpose. But we're rapidly approaching capacity of our career center.
But we are still partnered with CMI doing some.
We still have folks that go to CMI.
Right.
CMI is almost solely, exclusively devoted to manufacturing. And what we looked at here might be, and Eric is, of course, he's not here tonight, but he's done a lot of work with what are up and coming businesses. Might we do something with fuel cell technology? The idea is to design, almost like sometimes counties do spec buildings to recruit industry, sort of design a building that would be adaptable to various courses that might be taught over a period of time. And if they become very popular, then we might roll them out either back to a high school if that's appropriate, or one of the careers.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none. All in favor of the recommended motion to approve Firm 1 SGA, hello? Firm 1 SGA Normer Right Design to design the new Cape Innovation Incubator Center at River Mountain Science Center. Please address by saying aye.
Aye.
Right. Aye.
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 I think that was everything.
Aye.
The motion, all who who disagree say nay. I think it was a majority. I think it was all said yay. and we will move on. That motion carries. All right. 4.02, right-of-way for road improvements at the new Fountain Inn High School. I'll turn this over to Dr. Royster.
Unless the board has some questions, I think Mr. Webb fully explained the contract and so forth in the executive session. We don't know obviously what's going to happen in the construction market right now. None of our projects have been delayed. They're proceeding on all of them. If they continue to proceed, and if we don't approve this right away, it has the potential to hold up the project.
Yes, sir. Okay, the recommended motion from the committee of the whole, and needs no second, to approve the deeding of 1.975 acres of land at Fountain Inn High School to the Greenville Legislative Delegation Transportation Committee for road improvements at Quellan Avenue, Crossroad and Helen Street, and approved construction slopes permission. Any questions? All in favor, please address by saying aye.
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 The motion carries.
You didn't do all opposed.
I'm sorry? Yeah, I did. I said all opposed, say nay, but I had no nays. Were you a nay?
No, but you didn't know that because I'm not there.
Okay. Well, I didn't hear a nay. If I heard a nay, then I would have figured it was you, but there, because you were the only one. Thanks.
I didn't say nay.
She did not say no.
I know, nobody did.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. 4. Getting a little fancy. 4.03 waiver of policy IHAA final examinations. Dr. Royce.
Two critical things here. One is we have high schools on the block schedules. The course that is required for seniors to graduate, government economics. Government economics is a semester course. On the block schedule, it's taught quarter and quarter. The quarter that those students just completed, we were not able to give them their final exam and meet the depth requirements of the policy. So that's the immediate issue. Secondary issue, but equally as important, is if we were not to be able to return at the end of the year, given the final exam is probably not something we want to try to figure out in our first endeavor with online instruction. So we believe that the better part of discretion here would be for you all to waive that policy for the remainder of the year, which requires a final exam and requires a particular weighting for that final exam. I will also share with you that the state has already waived the end of course test for the state required exams in certain courses.
Questions? Ms. Wells?
The policy doesn't assign the weighting.
It requires us to waive it, I believe. I don't have the policy right for me. It requires us to give it.
Yes, sir. I believe the old policy actually had a weighting now attached to the rule. It's not a, it was a rule, but there's no weighting attached to the policy, right? Except for end of course tests from states.
Right.
Which have been waived by the state.
Right. So I guess since there is no weighting, I guess my question is, one of the things we said in this is an alternative is a final project of comparable significance. So one was an option to.
I don't believe that's something that we can accomplish in this period of time, considering everything else we've had.
Okay, because it would need to be cumulative to.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Ms. Bush?
Madam Chairman,
Wait a minute, I've got Ms. Bush.
Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion to waive board policy IHAA to enable the administration to award course credit without a final exam for the duration of the 2019-2020.
Mr. Meek?
second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I have a question. Ms. Joy.
Okay, Ms. Grayson?
So if we suspend this policy and high school kids, to Crystal's point, that are not logging on to do their work digitally for whatever reason, and they don't have an end of course, for a final exam in a class that they need to graduate in June, what are we going to do with the kids?
I didn't hear the first part.
I think, Ms. Grayson, can you repeat that? Because I think there was some scrambling noise on someone's phone. So could you repeat that clearly?
I'd be happy to. So if this goes back to Crystal's point about children who are seniors in high school that are not logging on, and if we waive the policy for end of course or final exams in classes that they need to graduate, do those kids graduate?
So if they are not online taking the classwork, Dr. Royster, it's my understanding that Ms. Grayson is saying, but they need the class to graduate, how will they get their grade?
Well, I think that goes back to, we hadn't quite figured out all the aspects of grading. And I think that we're going to get some direction from the state about grading because the uniform grading scale applies statewide. Now, it wouldn't prohibit us from doing something to either penalize a student who hadn't done any work or provide them an opportunity to do work. Removing your requirement doesn't hamper our ability to address whether or not they've done work.
Okay.
Any other questions, Ms. Grayson?
Well, I mean, I guess what I'm thinking, if they've got a 40, if they had a 40 before we closed the schools, which is not a passing grade, are they going to have until June to, I mean, I don't understand the participation part. Can somebody explain how the participation part works? I mean, what if they log on some, but not enough to get a passing grade?
Well, I think you're asking us a question we don't yet have the final answer to.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure I'm not missing something.
But this policy, whether it remains in place or it's waived, doesn't affect our ability to address the lack of work or provide an opportunity for them to do other work.
Okay, I think I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Grayson. Mr. Shanley?
I think that pretty much answered my question, but it wasn't on the lines of, yeah, maybe we don't have a final exam, but are there other ways we can give them a passing or failing grade? And one of the possibilities that strikes me is taking a 2-week summer, or whatever it is you need to get to that without having to redo the entire semester.
Yeah, I mean,
and they wouldn't be able to necessarily make it hard for them to go across the graduation line, but I'm just wondering if there's something else that we can do that would allow them. And also, do we know how many folks would fit into the category of pretty much being out of luck?
Well, your last question first, no, we don't at this point. We'll know at a point. But what you're talking about, while we might have perhaps a larger number of those this year because of this situation, we have students like that every year. So there's schools do all kinds of things to provide opportunities, particularly for a senior who could graduate if they get an opportunity to do this, opportunity to do that. So they work with students like that frequently now. It may just have a greater frequency this year because of the uniqueness of the circumstances.
So they might be able to walk. They just might not necessarily get their phone for 2 weeks or month away.
Well, yeah. If we look at our requirement is they have met all the requirements before they participate in the ceremony. But we have some to get their diploma during the summer. We have that happen every year. Not a huge number, but some.
Okay. All right. Hearing no other questions, all in favor, please address by saying
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion carries. 4.04 waiver of policy KCA, public participation. Recommended motion from the board chair to waive board policy KCA for the duration of the 2019-20 school year to allow public comment, account, and board meetings at the discretion of board chair during the current state of emergency. You all have the facts and impact statement, and it's due to the dangers of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with state and federal guidelines. GCS has closed its buildings to visitors effective March 23rd, 2020. The governor's executive order of March 17, 2020 prohibits public gatherings at any location or facilities owned or operated by state or any political subdivision thereof between March 18th and March 31st, 2020. And it's quite possible that this prohibition will be extended and has been. Therefore, it's the board chair's request a temporary waiver of board policy KCA, which states and it proceeds. Do you have any questions for me? I'll be glad to answer anything I can. Ms. Wells.
Well, I guess I'm happy to make the motion, but I would like to at least ask if the board chair, while we say through the duration of the 1920 school year, because we potentially, if this thing goes, if the state of emergency remains, and we also have a June board meeting, a June Cal and a June board meeting, which isn't really the school year. So would we just say, would we leave out for the duration of the school year and just say to waive the policy during the current state of emergency or until the governor's prohibition is lifted?
Madam Chairman, for clarification,
Yes, sir.
did you author this or did legal counsel?
I think this was discussed, but
This has been discussed by the administration and the board chair.
Okay, so then to Mrs. Wells' point of view, Doug, can you offer input on the timeline?
Looking at, I think that's a valid point that the board should consider. I think to waive the board policy KCA, and then to remove those 3 or 4 words for the 1920 school year would still allow the appropriate flexibility for the board chair, still recognizes that it's during the state of the emergency, current state of emergency. So I think that's a valid point for something for the board to consider.
So, and I would like to make a motion to waive board policy KCA to allow public comment at Cal and board meetings at the discretion of the board chair during the current state of emergency.
Okay. Is this the time to speak to that?
I think, just a minute, because there's a reason for some of this. And I think the current state of emergency is probably a factor.
And so just for a point of clarification for the record, the current state of emergency, as long as everybody's under the same understanding, would be for the COVID-19. And so technically there are different orders that extend the state of emergency. So that is collectively the state of emergency. So as long as everybody understands that and there's no ambiguity there, then I'm fine.
Well, I had also, I mentioned we could also make it until the governor's order is lifted.
So the reason I mentioned that to Doug is the governor, and I don't really have all the details of the constraint. He has certain constraints under which he can issue emergency orders, and there's a window of time. And once that passes, then he can issue another. So he might issue several during this overall state of emergency, in addition to the one that we're currently under. He's going to have to issue another to get us into the next.
Madam Chairman, this discussion's out of order until you have a second.
Yes.
Second.
The reason, you second my
Now
motion?
you got a second. Now you got.
Okay, you second my motion, so,
Should make a motion.
oh, you second Lisa's motion, Ms. Wells's motion?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So Madam Chair, I guess I'm gonna ask that is it more clear if this motion is amended to say during the COVID-19 state of emergency?
Yes.
So can I amend my motion?
So no one has second.
Yep.
Oh, somebody did second.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to amend by addition.
Okay.
I'd like to move to amend by addition to read the following: to waive board policy KCA to allow public comment at CAL and board meetings at the discretion of the board chair during the current COVID-19 state of emergency.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Any
Madam
discussion?
Chair,
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Dodd?
I would like to ask why it needs to say at the discretion of the chair, and I mean that this way. It sounds almost like sometimes you would say you can have public comment, and sometimes you would say you cannot. But I think your intention is not to have public comment during the state of emergency. So it seems a little clearer if you just said the chair recommends or whatever, but not to say at the discretion of the chair, because I don't think you mean that we're going to do it at all during this state of emergency.
Dr. Cristobal O'Connor? This came at my request, and I'm referring to the board policy, KCA, and that's why I'm in there, and that was the discretion of the board chair. Okay, so any board chair who is in this position, it would have come from the board chair since I was working with the administration.
And I don't,
Just a minute, Dr. Ball O'Connor.
Just for a point of clarification, I did review that and gave it some thought, and so that you can kind of see my logic behind it is that the state of emergency could be modified from what it is now to, in a month, 2 months, whenever it might be, to a more modified, lesser state of emergency that would allow participants and the public to come in here. So that's why we put that in there, for that flexibility.
And Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm fine with you having the flexibility, but then you wouldn't need to say it goes along with what the governor does. You could just say the chair recommends discontinuing public comment during the state of emergency. But right now, when it says at the discretion of the chair, I want to be sure that the public doesn't think that, well, maybe tonight there will be public comment. We need to look for where the chairman is going to make that choice.
Dr. Ball O'Connor, I'm going to take that in consideration. Is that all you had right now? Because I'm going to ask Mr. Sailors to speak.
I do have one more comment to it. I'm glad you're addressing it and doing it this way.
Yes,
but I wonder if we might also let our public know that in lieu of the public comment, they are still welcome to submit in writing their comments and concerns prior to these meetings. Because I don't think that the purpose is not to eliminate public comment, it is to eliminate public gathering.
I'm going to read one more thing in this. Citizens will continue to have the opportunity to contact trustees via U.S. mail, email, and telephone during this period. It is not a requirement of state law to include a public comment period at a regular board or committee meeting. In accordance with board policy BBC, this agenda item is being brought directly to the board without going through committee of the whole, as it does not directly affect the operation, administration, or direction of the school district. With that being said, the public has the ability and has the right to contact any of us.
Okay.
This is just during this period that the district is closed, and it's during the state of emergency and by the direction of the governor.
That's fine. I'm glad it specifically says in there, please feel free to continue to contact us, but just not in this forum. That's good.
Thank you. Mr. Sailors.
I think what you just read clarifies it, but essentially we cannot give the board chair authority to make a decision that's contradictory to an executive order from the governor's office related to this. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
So I just have a couple of questions. So one is, when a member of the public comes to a meeting and they provide public comment, those comments are recorded, correct? Are they a part of the actual meeting record?
They are.
So when someone sends me an email, it is not a part of public record. And I would believe it is not the equivalent to say that someone still has the ability to email board members and it be seen as equivalent to them coming and having their comments entered in the public record. So my question would be for the chair who recommended this motion, since you've listed here that citizens still have that opportunity, is it your intent that board members will be able to enter into public record on behalf of those constituents who are emailing us?
Mr. Webb, I would say if you choose and have the permission of that person and you want to enter their information during the meeting, it is up to you and the person who contacted you.
So that would require an agenda item. So are you intending to have an agenda item where board members can provide constituent feedback as a member of the entry of public record?
I'm going to ask Mr. Webb.
If I may add, these are unique times, and I think the board should adjust the best that it can and allow as much public participation as possible in compliance with the executive order and the safety and health of everyone. And I think that's why it's important to have live streaming of board meetings. I think it's important that the district administration remains accessible for concerns, that board members remain accessible and to address concerns and to hear concerns. But I do think that the public comment period, in order to comply with the executive order, needs to be temporarily prohibited. And so I would say that, Mr. Lewis, to your question, I think for this point of time, this short period of time, hopefully, that those public comments will not be able to be recorded into the minutes of this meeting or this aspect. But there are other avenues for members of the public to communicate concerns during this period of time, this state of emergency.
Right. What I was saying to the chair, though, is those two things are not the same. One is people have bothered to come here and provide public comment because they want their comments recorded in the record.
Yes.
The emails that I receive on a number of issues that I share with board members, typically the response I get from board members who disagree with me is, well, I haven't heard that concern. And the only way we can all hear that concern is if all of those emails are entered into public record so that all of the board and the public receive that information all at the same time. So if you're taking public comment away from our constituents, it is not equivalent to tell them they can email me directly. They already do, but that doesn't mean that you have copies of those contents. So what I want to know is, do we have a plan so that constituents can have their information entered into public record, even if they can't be here to do it directly?
If constituents want their names recognized and you have emails with their names, I would say that they could email the district with the information they want the district to know. And then if that's an agenda item, then that would be in discussion where we would have all those emails and those people that we would read their emails in a meeting pertaining to that particular agenda item. And then it would go into record. And if I'm wrong, I know it gets kind of questionable, but it depends on what the topic and the sensitivity of the topic as to what would be on the agenda. And I think that would all be discussed when agenda set is done.
And Mr. Lewis, I would say this from my legal perspective, that they're not 100% the same. Public comments and them reaching out to you, not 100% the same. But this is a state of emergency. And like I said, my recommendation to you as a board is to keep every avenue possible and open for the public to contact you, the administration, the district's Facebook page, whatever the case might be during this time period. But it is not possible in compliance with state law and executive order for the public to come in and to give comments. But I do think it's important to have every avenue available for the public to participate and to reach and contact the administration and the board. But my view is, given the unique state of emergency and times we're in right now as a society, is that this abbreviated time, we're just not going to have public comment.
Yes.
So my next question though, I thought I understood that state law requires school boards when creating their budgets to have an opportunity for public comment.
That's true.
So how do we balance? I mean, we are, I presume sometime during this school year, going to approve a budget, and we are required by law to provide an opportunity for public comments, but we are in violation of that law when I haven't heard the governor say he's putting that law aside.
Sure, and that will be a public reading opportunity for comment. And I think we're going to have to look at that as we get closer. Tonight, the motion before you is for board meetings and committee of the whole meetings. And I agree with you. I think we're going to have to look at that closer to make sure that we're in full compliance with the law and to allow public comment to the extent possible for the budget.
Unless it is waived by the legislature or by some act of the governor. I don't know what statutes he has the ability to waive by executive order. But right now, the requirement would be you offer public notice in the newspaper of record. It has to run for 16 days, I believe, 15, 16 days. And then you have a public comment opportunity. And then after that, you can approve your budget. You have some rules that you put in policy beyond that, but that's the base state law requirement. It applies not only to school districts, it also applies to county councils and I believe municipalities, but I'm not sure about municipalities.
Madam Chairman.
This body would not be the only body that might perhaps run into some issue in May or June, and there's no question now that our budget calendar is going to have to be revised. We just don't have the information. I don't know when we're going to have it. So we're going to send to the chair some other options for dates for budget workshop and first reading and public hearing, that sort of thing. We worked on that a little bit the other day. We're not going to know anything April the 7th. We didn't say that. We're just not going to know anything. Legislature's not going to enact it. So there's a lot there that remains to be seen. We'll continue to watch that closely, but the proposed calendar that we provide to the chair or the optional calendar that we provide, they include the requirement that we have that period of time in the public hearing.
Madam Chairman.
Just a minute, Dr. Chris O'Connor. Mr. Lewis has the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So just to clarify, because I think I heard the answer that I thought was, which is, so in your mind, the public hearing associated with approval of the budget is not a category board.
It is a board meeting for purposes of FOIA, not a board meeting for purposes of this policy. It's actually outlined in a different policy for the board.
Okay.
So to answer your question, yes, they're different.
So we can take action here, which specifically deals with the second and third, fourth Tuesday actual board meeting. And it would still provide us an opportunity to have public comment at the budget meetings, should those move forward at some point during this.
Yes.
With the way this policy is.
Unless that statutory requirement is lifted, you can't pass a policy that declines or eliminates that opportunity, unless it's somehow lifted.
I'm comfortable with that. I know that I've heard superintendents say this is going to be a tough budget. And I would hate for us to take action in March to prohibit the public from giving public comment on what could be a very substantial millage rate increase on them behind closed doors. So as long as I'm hearing the chair and our staff say this would not necessarily prevent public comment in the budget, then I'm comfortable with the other meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, for the clarity. Dr. Cristobal O'Connor?
Thank you. He handled that well. I understand. That's what I wanted to make sure of too. I didn't know that it would be addressed in a different place, so I was just going to suggest that we say the public may be requested to provide written comment wherever we need to make sure they are able to make formal written comment for the record instead of in person. But I'm fine with dealing with it separately or together. It didn't matter, but I'm glad for the clarification because I think it is an important point.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cristobal O'Connor. Mr.
Same
Shammy?
thing. I'm having a lot of trouble trying to figure out what is wrong with the public submitting written comments, particularly if they are allowed and stated in the public notices that they can send a comment via written notice that can be then put in the record. I'm not sure the problem is with that.
I don't think there's a problem with it. Just go send it to.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're telling me would, except you put whatever is appropriate in the notices, the public notices, that the public, although they will not be allowed to be here in present, is welcome to and encouraged to submit any written comments they would like to on the subject. Just like they would if they came in and read that particular comment. I'm having trouble trying my hands around that.
Mr. Webb, anything?
That is a possibility, and I'm trying to think through the logistics of it and how that would work. Sort of notice an opportunity and then how that would be brought into the record. I guess it is a possibility. In my mind, there are several other avenues that would allow public thoughts, comments, concerns to be shared with the board and or the administration during this brief time of the state of emergency. But again, that is up to you as a board. If you wanted to craft an alternative in light of the circumstances, then that would be up to the board to craft the parameters to do that.
I'm not sure why you can't just say send your written comments if you want to, and whatever legal terms you want to use. What's wrong with that? I know there might be half a dozen other ways to do that. I'm just curious what the problem is with saying, instead of being here in person, you can submit your comments that you would have given us in person in writing ahead of time, and then can then go into the record. I'm having trouble with that. I know that there are a lot of ways to do it, but it seems a little convoluted.
My one thing that stands out in my mind is, we see concerns all the time, the whole spectrum. And so with regard to the policy, when they're before you speaking, there are certain rules, parameters, saying you can't speak about individual people, students, for confidentiality concerns, things of that nature. I'm not sure that we want to have written comments brought in where we would have to more or less spend staff time to screen before they're put into the record to make sure there's nothing that would violate law, policy, or any other protections. So that is a concern that I would have on that front.
We don't do that with oral comments, verbal comments.
I mean, but you could stop the speakers. My point with written comments, you might have a whole different.
You can almost scratch it out. I think we're maybe making a mountain out of a molehill here. I don't want to do that, but I don't see the reason why, if they want to send a written comment, they can't do it. If the comment is inappropriate, scratch out whatever you got to do, or write them back and tell them that it's inappropriate. I'm just having trouble with that.
Mr. Shanley, this is only during this state of emergency.
Now, that could be for all times,
Okay.
but for this time, forget that. We've got to pass that. We're talking about now, how do they submit something for the record in the event of the continuation of this emergency? And I'm just having trouble getting a straight answer anywhere from what why you can't just say, if you want to submit your written comments, do it, just like letter to the editor, you know?
Well, they could submit, according to this, they could submit their information to you and you could give it to the superintendent.
It's like Mr. Rep said, there are a dozen different ways you can do it. What's wrong with this one?
My thing-
Might I speak to that?
Yes, please.
You're gonna send them to the-
Well, I'm not gonna say it. First of all, you got 3 minutes on that podium.
You can say 3 pages, I mean, any number of things you can do to make it clear.
If I might
Yes.
offer a suggestion,
Yes.
did they come to one person?
Me.
Chair.
Okay, have them send it to me.
But I would suggest that you be granted the right to remove anything that we would not accept, or that you would not accept by policy, the person stand up there and say. Whereas they can't stand up there and call somebody ugly names or whatever. If you want to do that, because to me, it would be concerning if they're coming to a bunch of different people, then that puts each of you in the place of having to decide whether to send that comment forward.
Right.
Send it forward. So if you make the announcement on the agenda, and say if you have a comment you wish to make, send it 24 hours ahead of time to the chair, and it'll be included in the record. You could do something like that. But quite honestly, we don't need any more work to take on from the administration standpoint at this point in time.
That's fine. With that,
Yeah, we
That
have,
sounds great.
we have a motion.
wait a minute, just a minute. Before we make another motion, because we got two. Are you,
Well, I'm ready to make a motion to that effect, if we're at that point, but I don't know if we voted on the late motion or not.
no, we're still having discussion. Let me, I'll come right back to
Okay.
Ms. Wells.
So I think that opens up a lot of issues. It complicates a lot of things because if the person is standing here in front of us speaking to us, we know that is a real person and that is a single person. If we say, you can send an email and let us know something. In today's day and age, people create all sorts of ghost emails so they can send things to you. So we don't have any way to vet, is that a real person? Is that not a real person? Is this person from China? Is this person a Greenville County school student? You don't have any way to vet. And we don't really know when people come and stand in front of us, but at least we see them and there's some measure of understanding that this is the person relaying this message. Behind the email, you can't see that. So my thought is, with where we are with the state of emergency, we aren't required by law to have public comment. That's what I read here. Outside of budget information, we've said we're going to hear from people on the budget. I think we need to go with this motion as it is and not make things more complicated. We are all doing double time, triple time, trying to make life work right now. And certainly staff is in that position. I think board members are in that position. So we do not need to make something more complicated or give a way for people to manipulate a system of communication and create some false messaging. So that's my comment there. I'd like to.
Yeah, I thought it was that before, but our response.
I'm coming
Okay.
back to you, Mr. Shanley. Are you, Mr.
I thought
Mr.
I did
Shanley?
that before we switched over there, but
Go ahead,
the
Mr.
question is
Shanley.
raised. To me, whether they send a handwritten, hand-delivered letter to the chair, or send an email or a text, we don't know for sure anything, but the most direct, in my mind, simplest way to get a comment to the record in this organization. And that's assuming that we think that's a good idea to begin with. If we're going to completely do away with public comment, that's another argument for another day. But if we're going to do that, and I think it's a good thing for us to do that, then there needs to be a pretty straightforward, pretty simple way to get those comments into the record. Now, if that means that you get a chance to go through whatever process, come up with something that's okay, but that's not going to be any better than an email. As you said, an email is one thing. But if they have a written document that they want to submit to the chair, to be considered and to put into the record, that's a very straightforward, very simple, and I'm having trouble figuring out why you would not want to do that.
So,
Why
Mr.
would you not
Shanley,
want to? That's what my question.
this is all I'm gonna say on this. This is just during this time for the count and the board meetings only. And at our count, we have very minimal people who ever show up. And at the board meeting, we have a sign-in, and they have a specific time. It was clarified that for the budget, that's a total different animal. They will have that option to come in and speak. At this time, we only want to focus on the time that the district is closed during the state of emergency by the. And this motion that's on the floor and what is effective here and now. This can change in a month or two, and people can come to the meetings when we have it.
That's all been given. That's no question.
Right.
The only question is, at this time, whatever this time is, how we define it, if someone wants to submit a written position or document into the record, how is the quickest, best, easiest way to do that? And I submit it is to have the person send the written document to the chair to then submit to the board for inclusion in the record. And if it needs to be redacted in any way, then the chair can do that at the chair's discretion. And I'm not going to sit here and fight all night long on it, but I cannot figure anything dumber than going around 16 other ways to do exactly the same thing.
So on the floor, if you want to make an amendment to the amended by attention motion, then you're welcome to do it.
And I intend to advocate for this motion here. Again, I don't want to make it like.
And there's a motion, there's amended motion on the floor. And you would have to make an amended motion to that one in order for this to move forward, because we would vote on each one. And you would need to say.
Again, I would think after this motion passes, we have the underlying motion, we still have to unless you're making that as a supplemental or a substitute motion. I think you were just moving to add to this current motion. So my thought would be, as soon as your motion is finished and it's been voted on, whether it's up or down, that we then add whatever else we need to make. But then you can't do it to any individual on the board by email. Carry your picture however you want to, but that you have the right to submit it to the.
Madam Chairman?
Just a minute, Dr. Cristobal.
Okay.
I have Mr. Sailors.
Well, no, Mr. Shanley is correct. The motion that you have before you is an amended motion by addition. If this passes, then it replaces the original motion, which means you got to vote on it a second time. When you vote on it the second time, it can be amended again.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Any other questions?
I just wonder if there's a way to see the motion for us, those of us on the phone.
Can I read it to you?
Yeah, yeah, I guess so.
I can't. Can you see it?
Madam Chairman, since I made the motion, I'll reread it with your permission.
Please.
The motion as amended is to read, to waive board policy KCA, to allow public comment at CAL and board meetings at the discretion of the board chair during the current COVID-19 state of emergency.
To allow?
That's the amended motion by addition.
To allow, Mr. Sailors?
Allow public comment.
That's the way it's read, yes, ma'am.
To waive the policy.
To waive the policy.
Waive the policy.
Gotcha, yeah.
To waive the policy.
Okay.
Do you understand? Did that come across correctly, Dr. Ball-O'Connor?
Yeah, I understood it. I'm trying to anticipate Mr. Shanley's comment and thinking about where written versus not written is appropriate. So it's just before we proceeded, I wanted to understand that. So thank you.
Okay. So we are. Yes.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Meek.
My only question is, I'm listen to everybody there, and my only question is, Mr. Saylor's motion is that should be a substitute motion instead of just an amended motion. I can't see both of them, so I can't tell.
I believe it's arising out of and in line with to be an amended motion as made correctly. It doesn't change the complete nature of it to be a substitute motion.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor, I guess, are we gonna do roll call here?
No.
No? All in favor, please address by saying aye.
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 All opposed, nay?
No.
One. The amended motion carries. So the motion,
As amended. Any discussion on that?
Yeah. No.
okay. Any discussion?
I have a question, please.
Yes.
If Dr. Royster's suggested compromise were to be addressed by Mr. Chamley, how would one go about saying we're waiving the opportunity for in-person comment, but instead would allow any written comment to be made to the chairman prior to the meeting? How would the way the motion that is currently substitute or currently amended reflect that best?
Mr. Webb?
Yeah, I think we would have to think on that and put in the appropriate verbiage in there. I don't know, Royster or whoever.
Mr.
Discuss
Chamley?
that.
It's kind of hard to discuss some sort of motion for that. I'd like to make a motion. I think we'll address that simply by adding another sentence to that section. In such case, the public is invited or is welcome or may submit any written comments they would like with respect to the subject of any issue on the current agenda to be included in the written record.
Is that your motion?
Just a minute, Dr. O'Connor. Can you repeat that one more time?
In such case, the public is allowed to submit any written comments they would like in lieu of public appearance to be included in the record of the meeting. And if they are addressed,
Madam Chair?
and I would suggest that we add in there at some point, like, written this year.
Madam Chair?
Just a minute, Dr. Baldwin, we're trying to get the verbiage written.
Did you make it? Did you make a motion or did he still just?
Are you making a
I made a
motion?
motion, we would add that in the second sentence.
So you're amending the motion with addition, by addition, by amended motion by addition to the motion that we just voted on. That we just amended. All right. Is there a second?
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Dr. Chris Baldwin.
Yes, I would like to ask the maker of the motion.
In order for this to be. Okay, so second.
I'm not sure that I can, it's kind of muffled and I'm sorry that if I'm talking over somebody. Did you address me?
Okay, I'm addressing you now.
Okay, the maker of the motion entertain what Dr. Royster said earlier, which is providing that those comments are in line with the policy preventing any kind of untoward content in the way that it should be said, but that message could be there so that the chairman has the right to exclude anything from the public record based on policy. Would the maker of the motion include that idea?
Madam Chairman, point of order. Madam Chairman.
Mr. Meek,
Yeah, point of order. Did you get a second on that motion?
I was offering to make one if he might consider
Did you get a
adding
second
one.
on that motion, Madam
it was
Chairman?
already seconded by Mr. Sutton.
Okay. Okay, I didn't hear that. Thank you.
Dr. Christopher Connors.
I just asked the question. I don't know how Mr. Shamley might want to address it, but I'm sure that Mr. Webb could easily incorporate that if the maker of the motion was willing. Otherwise, I could make an amendment to it, but that would complicate things.
Madam Chairman, if I might add, the motion's on the floor. It can't be unless it is amended.
That's correct. So this would either need to be amended or voted down and done again.
Well,
So, Dr. Christopher Connor, do you have any other questions?
my comment is that during this time of a state of emergency, we may have, in fact, some of the most important business that we will ever have to do. And for that reason, I'm not comfortable excluding formal public comment. And I like, therefore, Mr. Shamley's motion. I just simply think that it's important to include the component that says, provided that is within our policy and referring to it, so that if you get some sort of garbage back, as Ms. Wells cautioned, you can toss it. And that just allows for that screening, just as we do in public. And if somebody would help me with that language, given that I can't really see it and submit it properly, I would be grateful.
You can't amend the amendment. It would have to be voted down. And Ms. Wells, did you have Ms. Wells? Did you have a question?
Well, I think there is so much logistically. If we're saying, well, people can submit public comment, but oh wait, the chair can screen them, or oh wait, how do you, again, you can't verify that what you're getting. We get email, I know y'all get email all the time that's from Phantom whoever, trying to sell you something or whatever it is. I just don't think, I agree that legitimately the public should be able to provide us input, but we have social media, we have all sorts of ways for the public to publicly say things to the board, to Greenville County Schools. We have ways for people to do that. We're not squashing that opportunity. I think we're opening ourselves up to more problems if we begin to try to come up with a methodology without people doing some significant work on it to determine how it comes in, who does it come. What if Linda has a spam filter that 15 people send something that don't get through to her that she never sees? I just don't think the logistics of that is worth the downside of how it could be perceived and how it could be managed. So I think we need to, it's a state of emergency. We have people in the district working round the clock, 24/7 to make the district go. I think we just need to pass this motion and move on.
Mr. Lewis.
I just have a question for Doug.
Yes.
board policy KCA has 3 sections. One is about appearance at meetings of the board, and one's about appearance of cow. The section 3 is about rules for appearances. So as I read, this person is waiving board policy KCA to 11. It's specifically about not allowing public comment. Wouldn't section 3 still be I mean, it seems like section 3 of our existing policy would address Dr. Paul O'Connor's questions about appropriate content, because we didn't waive that. We just waived whether or not people could speak in person at the meeting.
Okay.
And I would say, Mr. Lewis, for clarity purposes, given that section talks about appearances and it's all related to comments, I do, if this amended motion were to pass and be considered, I would recommend that you would have that clarification that it would still have to be consistent with this policy. But yes, I would recommend that.
Three words with this, I'd like to add for the word written comments.
What?
But procedurally, in order to add anything to this motion to amend, it either needs to be voted down, or pretty much voted down, I would say, in order to make that change.
As a point of order, can a motion be withdrawn and resubmitted by the maker of that motion?
Now, once it's second, it's on the floor for the entire board's consideration.
So are there any questions? Yes, Ms. Clinton.
Point of clarification, the questions can only be submitted to the chairman. Thank you.
Okay.
We can move to the secretary. Shift to the secretary.
That's what I want to make sure.
So,
Yeah. All right, any other comments? At this time, we'll take a vote. All in,
Madam Chairman, I never heard the amended motion. Mr. Chamley, I couldn't hear him at all when he made it. So
can you read that?
did
Have
somebody make it?
I'm gonna have Mr. Sailors read it.
I don't know if I need to be appreciative of that or not, but I'll give it a go here. Since I have a loud voice in the room, is that it?
I can't see it.
That's okay. The motion has been amended. If approved, we read to waive policy KCA for the duration of the 2019-2020 school year to allow public comment at CAL and board meetings at the discretion of the board chair during the current state of emergency. In such case, that the public is allowed to submit to the chair any written comments they would like to, in lieu of public comments, to be included in the record of the meeting. Period.
Okay. All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
No.
The noes have it.
The noes have it, the motion fails, the amended motion failed. So,
Now we go back to the motion that was amended originally.
yes, we'll go back to the amended motion that was,
Mr. Stanley, I'm sorry.
wasn't that one passed? That one passed, the amended motion. No,
We didn't go
Yeah,
back to the floor.
so we go back to the amended
That's on the
motion.
floor then.
Yes. One on the floor, okay?
Excuse me. I'm having trouble hearing. Did anyone offer another amendment?
No, it failed.
I know, but does that mean, does anybody else want to address what we just talked about? If not, I will.
Mr. Lewis,
Madam Chairman, I would just ask, in the interest of time, for this very short meeting that was supposed to end an hour ago, would you be willing to work with superintendent to maybe explore the future meeting opportunities for public comment to be entered into the record, which you could do as an agenda item for a board meeting without us having to take action here?
So you don't want to take action on
I'm
this?
saying we could pass a motion as amended, which
Yeah,
would
motion,
deal
okay.
with the urgency of the situation. And then I think you heard advice from board members. The agenda is set by the superintendent and the chair, so you could, I believe, if you wanted to, explore a way that an agenda item could be added for public comment, written comment, if you choose to,
Yes.
rather than us wordsmithing.
If you allow me to, yes, okay, thank you. Ms. Wells?
So my only caution there is, I haven't heard a majority of the board say that they would want me to move forward with such an action. So, just take, as the chair, just take that, as long as you're taking that into consideration, that's just a comment.
I would say that there would be no action taken. It would be a discussion between the superintendent and also Mr. Webb and myself to come up with maybe some alternatives, but no action is being taken. We will only now vote on that amended motion.
For clarification,
Yes, sir.
and any discussion that you, Mr. Webb, and Dr. Boyce will have related to Mr. Lewis's comments will be brought back to this body at a future time.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm sure we're gonna get the motion.
Yeah,
Where's the correct
Nancy, you're gonna have to delete that addition so we can vote on that motion.
Does that work?
There you go.
That's it.
Or that's not the correct figure?
Now, that's the one that was passed earlier as a substitute or amended.
So we're good?
So now we have a motion on the floor.
Madam Chairman, could you read the motion, please?
See if Mr.
I'll be
Meek.
glad to, Madam Chairman, I'll be glad to.
Okay,
The motion on the floor currently is to waive board policy KCA to allow public comment at town and board meetings at the discretion of the board chair during the current COVID-19 state of emergency.
any questions? All those in favor, please address by saying aye.
Right.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion carries. Okay. We will move on to 4.05, waiver of policy BBAA officers election. The recommended motion is to waive the provision of board policy BBAA directing the board secretary to announce the roster of candidates for board chair, vice chair, and secretary for the subsequent year at the April meeting of the Committee of the Whole, and instead require the secretary to release the 2021 roster to the board and public by April 7th, 2020. I think due to the changes, the dangers of COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the state and federal guidance, the board chair has utilized under board policy BBC to change this committee of the whole day when necessary to cancel the April 2020 committee of the whole. Basically what it comes down to is we don't have a meeting April 7th. We need to go ahead and submit, if you're interested in running for board chair, vice chair, secretary, to Ms. Glenda Marson-Fair by April 7th. At that time, she will send out notification to everyone who has sent in their request to run for a specific office. At that time, you have 7 days to either withdraw your name or submit your name. Okay? That's, yes, sir. And so that's what this would this would deal with. So it's not that we would have to meet on April 7th, it's that the secretary would send out to all the board members who has submitted their names to run for what office. Yes, Ms. Wells.
So just clarify, you said April 7th would be good thing to review, but you haven't waived that part of the policy, so the actual date for submitting a letter is still April 1st.
April 1st, yes, I'm sorry. April 1st, I'm sorry. The date is April 1st to submit, and then Mrs. Linda Morrison, who is our secretary, will post it on April 7th. And then I believe there's a time span. Ms. Wells.
I meant to waive the provision of board policy BBAA, direct the board to announce the roster of candidates for board chair, vice chair, and secretary. The subsequent year at the April meeting of the committee of the whole, and instead require the secretary to release 2021 roster to the board and public by April 7th, 2020.
Second. Any discussion? Mr. Lewis.
So two questions. One, the last phrase in that says release the roster to the board and explain what that means to the public.
Doug.
Well, and that's something that can be clarified here. Yeah, there are different ways to do that. We could put it on the website. We could put it in board docs. So I think as long as communicated and accessible to the public, that would meet the definition.
We would also communicate to the same media outlets that we could get notice.
Does that answer the question?
We're going to use media outlets who's running for which office.
All the offices.
Okay. The second question I have is in the beginning, I want to make sure I'm reading correctly. The chair has used her authority to cancel the April 2020 meeting.
April 7th meeting.
It says, yes, April 2020 meeting.
That
It was canceled at the direction of the chair. We placed a tentative budget workshop on that day. We're not going to have information related to the budget process that day. So we would not hold a budget workshop on that day.
The reason we canceled the CAL is because of the staff and the direction that was unknown. And then when there was the state of emergency governor, we figured we would not be able to get all that and find the items prepared by that time, since the staff and the district have been working on everything for students. And so
I'm not sure.
there was,
I just want to make sure. The question I'm asking is the April 2020 CAL meeting?
yes, it's canceled.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam Chairman,
Dr.
will we be able to receive, I know we have seen some revisions on the calendar, but are we saying that if, just because you canceled the CAL, does that mean that the April board meeting would automatically be canceled?
No, not necessarily.
I think that obviously would be a decision that the chair might make, dependent on the circumstances of the time. But we don't really know where this issue may go.
Right.
Your
That's not
policy,
relevant to the question on the table.
because it's an emergency, your policy would allow you to address anything that needs to be before.
Dr. Chris Bolton, let me clarify something a minute. Before the committee of the whole meeting was canceled, the executive board were all included on discussion. And this is not exactly coming directly from me. It was the consensus of the executive committee. I do reference our officers and the executive committee. So it's just not me that comes up and just says, we're not going to do this. I listened to the board, the executive committee, And that's the way we came up with, and then I made the decision that board meeting was canceled due to, the committee of the whole was canceled due to the circumstances with our state.
Madam Chair, I hope I didn't say anything to suggest that I questioned your decision or the input you got, because I'm absolutely fine with it. I just wondered if it also meant further changes to our calendar, like not having a board meeting in April. So if I said anything that made you feel that way, I certainly didn't mean to.
Yeah, Dr. O'Connor, at this time, we're in unknown territory. So until, we have more direction, we'll make that decision. But at this time, we have this on the floor, and there's a motion that has been made. And Lisa, you made that motion. Who seconded? Okay. So if there's any discussion to the motion, I will take those questions now. If not, we'll go to vote. Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
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 All opposed, nay. The motion carries. At this time, we will go to 5.01 monthly finance report. Dr. Royster.
You have information in your packet. As I mentioned to you earlier, our revenue continues to track on pace with our projection for the year. Our expenses are tracking on pace for projection for the year. However, what we have in here does not reflect anything we might have done in the last several days. And we obviously cannot accurately project what might happen with revenue through the end of the year. But the bulk of our property tax revenue has probably already been received. And it's in line. Our state revenues, we're still receiving those. It's just too early to tell what impact the change to the economy might have, but we really believe that the greater impact of that will likely appear in next year's revenues and big consideration for our next year's budget. There'll be some expenses will be under. We're not actually buildings doing things. There are other expenses we've incurred that we would not have ordinarily incurred. We simply are, as we have the authorization doing the board policy, moving monies around in accounts to cover those expenses. The other thing that I will share with you is we are diligently tracking every expense we have related to COVID. Almost all of our work for 2 weeks at the executive staff level has been directly related to that. And every bit of that, under a state of emergency, generally speaking, comes reimbursed by the federal government. What you have to do, though, is keep very good records on it. You have to follow all their numerous protocols and go to their meetings and feel like they're going through. Obviously, there's a lot of bureaucracy in it. Last time we collected on a disaster was ice storm in 15, 16, somewhere along in there. It took about 2 years, I believe, for us to ultimately collect on that. But we would, at the outset of this, we began recording everything related to any expense of time, material, or equipment related to addressing the state of emergency. We will continue to do so that we can appropriately seek reimbursement for monies that the taxpayers laid out, local taxpayers laid out in response to this national emergency. We don't we have anything else related to finance. If you have a particular question, then probably we'll have to try to answer that for you.
Ms. Wells?
Real quickly, there isn't any funding source that we're not going to be getting that we had included in our budget based on like the service we're not providing or anything like that, right?
There might be some Medicaid reimbursements that we may not get because services provided, but because of the way we budget Medicaid, because we never know when the rules are going to change, that wouldn't be something we'd have to be concerned with this year. That's the only one where it's a direct service, because technically all other services like we get from EFA ratings, that sort of thing, we're providing those services in a different way, but we're providing. That would be the only one I can think of, and that's a special revenue. And I said we have always positioned it such that, because you never know when they're going to change their rules, so that it doesn't have an immediate impact to us.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chairman, I move.
Madam Chairman, Madam Chairman,
Roger.
There's a motion on the floor to adjourn. Did Mr. Meek?
did you get a second? Madam Chairman,
Sir.
do I have the floor?
Yes, you do.
I'd just like to know what the signed and the unassigned fund balance is.
That, signed and unassigned fund balance.
Who's coming around, Ron?
Well, I'm not hearing.
January is $209.8 million.
Madam Chairman, I couldn't hear the number.
At $9 million. Did you hear that?
No, Madam Chairman, I'm getting a whole lot of feedback from somebody's phone, I think.
I got their, if they can put it on mute, then Mr. Meek can hear this.
I can hear you loud and clear now.
$209.8 million.
Is that the unassigned?
Unassigned fund balance.
What's the assigned fund balance?
Assigned fund balance is $4.1 million.
Okay, I thought we had some more fund balance that was assigned out there. I guess not.
There would have been some
Okay,
moved to capital.
Mr. Meek, did you hear that?
no,
Okay,
Mr. Meek, when you all approved some of the fund balance expenditure to be expended on capital projects or equipment, it was immediately moved to the capital budget.
okay. I was just wondering if the assigned budget, if we could hold up on that, we'll see what the financial stability of state of South Carolina was going to be before we spent that.
is that all, Mr. Meek?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Meek, would you like to make a second to the motion to adjourn?
I'll second it. Yes, ma'am.
Any questions? All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
The motion carries. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.